Well, it's December 6, 2013, the day before Pearl Harbor Day, and we're at Pine Harbor Assisted Living on the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base in the morning, about 10 o'clock in the morning, because we're going to interview somebody whom I bet recalls Pearl Harbor Day vividly. Her name is Beulah, and she is or is going to be very soon 105 years old. We're going to meet her. We're going to meet her daughter Dolores, I understand, along with Maria Diaz, who's in charge of sales and marketing for Pine Harbor. There are several assisted living complexes located here on the former base and not far from the old base cemetery. And it's all part of a magnificent reuse plan that happened when the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base closed way back when. We're delighted to be here today. I'll bet you learned something, because I know we will too. Stay tuned. Well, we're inside and out of the weather on a fairly windy and bitter, but not too bitter December morning.
Yeah, not too
with
bad.
With Maria Diaz, who is in charge of marketing and...
Yep, marketing for Pine Harbor.
For Pine Harbor, and you've been here for a year?
About a year and a half now.
That's wonderful. Are you a local girl?
No, not originally.
Where?
Originally from New Jersey.
New Jersey without a New Jersey accent?
I know, I ditched the accent.
I love it. How did you do that?
Well, my life became a spelling bee. You know, everyone always wanted me to, how do you say W-A-L-K?
Oh, yeah.
So, after a couple coffees and walks, you just start
ditching it. Did you go to school
it.
up here, Maria?
Nope, I didn't.
Just moved to Plattsburgh?
A boy brought me up here.
It seemed like a good idea at the time, right?
Yeah.
Well, Pine Harbor is a wonderful place to be and work, and we, Calvin and I, and even before that, me on the radio, paid a lot of attention to all these new senior housing places up here, and we're delighted to see this all happen.
Yeah.
You never saw Plattsburgh Air Force Base when it was here then?
No, I never had the pleasure of experiencing it, but I certainly heard a lot of stories, and a lot of the residents do share a lot of stories of what it was like when the base was open.
It's a wonderful and rich history here in the North Country.
That it is.
We're delighted to have you here, and we hope that the winter isn't too nasty and bitter and bad.
Oh, that's okay. I can handle it.
Why this kind of business for you? Why did you choose this?
A couple years ago, when the economy wasn't so great, I had lost my job and wound up working for a senior care community. So it was completely out of necessity and survival, and initially anyway. And then what I found was it was such a wonderful field to work in that I just fell in love. I loved the seniors. I loved working with them and their brutal honesty. And so I just decided to stay in the field.
And the possibility of making a real difference had to be a factor in your life. When you touch these lives, and guess what? It's reciprocal. They touch yours too, don't they?
Oh, they absolutely do. I can still recall residents that I worked with, and this is over 5 years ago, that were very detrimental in me making some major life-changing decisions. So
isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
When you can learn at a young age, and you're such a young, tender age, to appreciate life's transitions.
Yeah.
And to understand that you're going to be there someday, Lord willing, and if the creek doesn't rise, I'm on the next step, and Calvin's 10 years behind me. But we have some of the best programs we've done are interviews with people who've been there and done that. When we were outside, I mentioned Pearl Harbor, and tomorrow is Pearl Harbor Day, a day that will live in infamy for those of us who were alive back in those days. And we're going to interview a lady who probably remembers Pearl Harbor Day on December 7th, way back in the early 1940s. Her name is Beulah LaVarnway.
Yes.
When did you first meet Beulah? When you came here?
When I first started working here, Rayanne, our executive director, did a really great job when I first started working here of showing me around and helping me meet residents. And I'll never forget, she pointed out Beulah and she goes, guess how old she is? And I was like, I don't know, 90,
Yeah.
and at the time, she was 104, and so
It's just,
you're like, whoa.
Calvin and I have interviewed many senior citizens on television, and many of them before that. I don't believe I've interviewed anybody who was 105. On the cusp, maybe 102, 103, maybe even 104 one time.
Yeah.
But her birthday is coming up just before Christmas?
It is after Christmas,
Just
December 28th.
Wow.
Yeah.
Living to see another Christmas.
Yeah.
We're going to get an historical perspective in the first person in our program today that people won't very often get a chance to do. So I really appreciate you doing that.
Oh,
Did her daughter show up?
Yes, she
Dolores
is here.
too?
Dolores is here as well.
We're going to have so much fun. If you've never met anybody who's 105, stay tuned. Maybe Calvin and I will make it, but in the interim, we'll talk to Beulah LaVarnway.
Yeah.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
I don't mind saying that I'm delighted to be here. First of all, because it's nice and toasty and warm and decorated for the holidays. Isn't that great?
Yes, it is.
And guess who's sitting next to me? Beulah LaVarnway. How are you today?
Good.
See how easy it is? It's not, I was fine yesterday, but I don't feel so good today. I'm good. She feels, look at her. You've had a lot of birthdays, lady.
Yes, I have.
104 of them so far.
And 4. Yeah,
And one more coming up just a little tiny bit
Just-
after Christmas.
just a minute, yes.
You know what, your daughter, and how are you, Dolores? Dolores Barnes?
Yes, I'm fine.
Do you live nearby too?
Yes, I live out on Route 9.
Not far. We're all just a stone's throw. Maria's in Schuyler Falls. I'm in Morrisonville. And Beulah's right here. Do you like it at Pine Harbor?
I'm at Pine Harbor, yes.
See that? They didn't pay her any money to say that. She just likes it here.
Yes, I do.
Warm hands and a warm heart.
Yes. Good food.
And good food, that's very important, as people can tell, because we're on television now. And I haven't been a lightweight since I was 6 months old. And I'm not sure I wasn't a very fat baby way back when. Beulah,
Yeah,
where were you born?
I was born in Altona, New York.
Well, Altoona, New York is far different from Altoona, Pennsylvania.
I know
Well,
it does.
you know what? My wife, Kay, was born in Altoona also.
She was?
Uh,
What was her name?
Her name was Vaughn. She was a Vaughn. Her father was Alfred Vaughn, and her mother was Leona Vaughn. And my wife was born on a farm that used to be called Gale Meadows, off of the Rand Hill Road. And it's now the YMCA Day Camp, Camp Jericho,
Oh,
right off the Rand Hill Road, Altoona. So you see, you're connected with me whether you like it or not.
that's right.
I hope you like it. So you were born in a home right up there in Altoona?
Yeah,
On the Vassar Road.
Yes.
Yes, you can chime in here anytime you want to fill in the history that we can't. What was your maiden name?
Tremblay.
Well,
T-R-M-B-L-Y.
of course.
It's a French name.
Never mind the E in there, right?
It's already spelt in French.
Yep. Were your parents from Canada?
Not that I know of. They always live in the locality.
No kidding.
Yes.
Well, Tremblay is a fairly common North Country name.
Yes, it is.
And I got to tell you, when I first moved here in 1961, there weren't any Littles beside me. Now I'm meeting new families of Littles all over the place. And so it's nice to know that you're from the North Country, and I can't think of a better place to be from than Altoona.
Altona.
Did
yeah.
you go to the old Altoona school?
No. My first school was in Ingraham. It was a one-room schoolhouse, And then I graduated and went to Shazy Central.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You know, it's I love to talk about one-room schoolhouses. What do you remember about one-room schoolhouse you went to?
Well, I saw my one-room schoolhouse where I started school, and it was being very well taken care of. It's kept painted, and it even has a flagpole yet.
Oh, come on, a flagpole still?
It's still standing, yes, but it is a small room, a small schoolhouse near another building. I guess they were just kept intact for me.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes,
In Ingraham.
in Ingraham.
You know, Ingraham.
John Deere Hill.
What?
John Deere Hill, what they call.
Of course.
Well, that's where she lived as a young child.
With Trombley's house.
Yes.
Is she related to Lyle's?
Yes, that's her brother.
Lyle's is her brother.
He's her brother.
Well,
her
see,
youngest
Calvin
brother.
is telling me that he knows Trombley's, right?
Yes.
Well,
Tony
So-
Marshall.
Who would? They're all over.
they're all over. Trombley's are everywhere. Look at the beautiful kitty cat. Look at the beautiful kitty cat.
They have two of them here.
What is your name, kitty cat?
Kitty cat.
Kitty cat is perfect. That's a perfect. We didn't have fancy names for our pets. Kitty cat.
It never goes by me, but when I say hello, kitty cat.
I love it. Ingraham is special for me because you know what? I write ghost stories. And a lot of people who've lived in Ingraham have told me stories of ghosts up there in some of the old buildings in Ingraham. So I love to go up there. It's a nice little community that most people who head up Route 9, they don't take the time to go over and around through Ingraham. But if somebody watching this lives in the North Country and has never been there, take a ride to Ingraham and just look around and say, I wonder if there's any ghosts in that old building there.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I've never seen any.
Now, you're going to live to be at least 110,
Yes.
so you got 5 more years to go,
Yeah.
and you have to promise when you leave us that you'll come back to say hello,
Yes. Once in a while.
but don't take my coffee in the morning, that's all.
Yeah.
So you went to the one-room schoolhouse,
Yes.
and the building is still there,
Yes.
and did you start when you were 5 or 6?
I was about 6.
So almost 100 years ago. This is blowing my mind. We have an audience, by the way. I don't know if you would call it a peanut gallery, but we're delighted to have all of you ladies with us here today. Do you remember the name of your first teacher?
I think it was Miss Harvey.
Isn't that amazing? Now I'm only 30-some years younger than you are, and I have no idea who my first teacher was.
You don't?
I can't remember if I have white socks or blue on this morning. You think her name was Harvey?
Harvey.
I think her name was Harvey, yeah.
Harvey.
Oh, Harvey, yes,
Harvey.
yeah.
Catherine Harvey.
Oh, see, look at this. We're getting the first name. You are amazing, Beulah. Do you know that? Yes, I know. You're amazing. So you started there when you were about 6,
Yes.
and did you have to walk to school?
Yes, we had to walk to school. It was about half a mile.
Half a mile. There's a wonderful book called Sugar on Snow, written by a friend of mine called Jane Lawless Murphy, who lived up there on Rand Hill, and her first one-room schoolhouse was just a little over a mile away, and they had to walk every day.
Yeah.
And she asked her mother how far it was to school, and her mother said 1.1 miles. So for the first 6 months of school, she was looking for a tent on the way because she thought her mother said 1.1 miles.
Oh.
So isn't that funny?
Yes,
But her
it is.
book is called Sugar on Snow. Have you ever had sugar on snow?
Yes, yes. Every year.
No, isn't that wonderful? We live in New York's North Country. Other people in other states and other countries say they have North Country, but nobody's got North Country like this North Country.
No,
We live in right in the middle of how many sugar bushes? Boy, oh boy! And wasn't it fun to get the sap and boil it down back in those days?
yes, it was. But now they have moved the sugar house from the farm to the sugar bush. It is different now.
It's so different. They have tubes, plastic tubes that go to all the trees,
Yeah.
and they don't use wood-fired, whatever they call those things. I know the name and I can't come up with it.
Heat.
Yeah, they used wood-fired boilers back in those days to boil the sap.
I don't know what they use today.
Well, some of them use fuel oil, and now our good friends at Parker's up on the Slauson Road in West Chazy have turned to pellets, wood pellets, little tiny wooden pellets. So that's what they're burning these days. So it is different than it was when you were a little gal.
It is different, yes.
So you went to the one-room schoolhouse through what grade?
Well, to the 7th grade.
And then what?
Then Chazy Central.
You went to Chazy Central.
Yeah.
Now, you know, in my neck of the woods over in Franklin County in Moira, where I went to high school, the school wasn't even centralized until after I graduated, so it was a little tiny high school. Chazy Central was lucky. It had one of the best schools in the entire United States.
Still does.
And still does, but the old school was state-of-the-art, built by the late William H. Minor,
Right.
and it was beautiful back then, wasn't it?
Yes, it certainly was. We had things of beauty that we did not realize we had.
No, and looking back on it, Calvin and I have been fortunate enough to talk to people who taught there, to look at a lot of the old history books, and to talk to young students that went there like you, young students,
Yes.
and who really had a good experience. Now, how did you get to high school from Ingraham? How did you get there? Did you?
Well, we had to either furnish our own ride or else pay for it, one or the other. If we rode with somebody, we had to pay for a ride, and of course, if we had our own transportation, we could tie it up under this church shed.
Oh, don't you love it?
The church.
What'd you say?
Horse and wagon.
Horse and wagon, right?
Yes, it was a horse and wagon days.
Of course, and even the early school buses were horse and wagon, right?
Were
Horse-drawn school buses?
They were horse-drawn school buses, yes. Yes, and in the wintertime they were an open sleigh because the buses were narrow and they were tall and they would tip over easy.
Oh, boy.
You couldn't have that with children.
Oh, my goodness. Did you have heavy blankets to put over you on the way?
We had blankets, yes.
Buffalo robes?
Yes, buffalo robes,
See
yes.
that?
Yes.
So how far was it from Ingraham to Chazy?
Well, I might say 5 or 6 miles.
No kidding. So you had to get ready early in the morning.
It was still dark, yes, when we left the house.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
We were 5 of each, 5 and 5, 5 boys and 5 girls,
Come on, 10 kids?
10 kids.
Oh, my goodness. Now, where did you fit in the middle? Were you the youngest?
No, I was the second one.
The second one.
Yeah.
So you were the boss?
Well, you might say I was left to take care of the household more than once.
Oh, boy, oh, boy. And it was hard work just to get through the day back in those days, wasn't it?
It was. We didn't think it was, but it was.
There weren't too many modern conveniences.
There were none.
First of all, we've decided there were no cars at first.
No.
There were no microwave ovens.
No,
There were no television sets.
no,
Not even any radios.
no,
Do you remember seeing newspapers when you were a little girl?
yes.
Yeah, there were newspapers.
The newspapers came in every day.
So you got to see what was going on in the world.
Well, it came to the house.
Yeah.
If we didn't see it, it was our own fault.
Now stop to think about this. What year were you born in? What year?
1908.
This is, to me, is amazing. So you might remember when the First World War started.
Yes, I do.
Well, you were just a young teenager,
Yes,
and you had no way of listening to a radio because there wasn't a radio, so you had to rely on the newspaper every
on the
day.
newspaper, yes.
Now, as a little kid, and I know with 5 boys and 5 girls in your family, it was a chore just to keep the house going, keep the fires warm in the wintertime,
Yes,
keep clothes on your back and make it to school and home and cook supper and make the beds, and
yes.
all your clothes were handmade, right?
They were handmade, yes.
Did you learn to sew early as a little girl?
My mother had a sewing machine.
She did?
She did, yeah.
And I bet you it was one of the old treadle sewing machines, right?
It was one of the old treadles. Yes.
You had no motor on it, so you had to keep your foot going.
You had to keep your foot going. If you forgot to move your foot, the machine didn't go.
And did she teach you how to sew?
Well, I learned from my mother. My mother was a good seamstress. And then we had sewing at school from the 7th grade up.
Yes. Did they call it home economics back in those
They
days?
called it home economics.
Isn't that? See that?
Yeah,
And they taught you how to do things in the home.
yes, they do. They did.
And you probably knew how to cook long before you went to 7th grade.
Long before I went to 7th grade, yes.
I was just thinking about your one-room schoolhouse. Now, when you went there and you went to school all day,
Yeah.
did you bring any lunch with you, or did the school teacher
No,
make it, or what?
we either brought our lunch or else we went home to lunch. And when I went home to lunch, I had to help with the dishes before I could go back.
Think about this, folks. The young people today have it so easy compared to what life was like when you were a little girl. You went home to lunch as a little kid, and then you had to do the dishes before you went back to school.
Before I went back to school, yes.
So sometimes you took a lunch.
Sometimes I took a lunch, and sometimes we, had to get our own too.
What was your favorite lunch back in those days? Do you remember what you liked to eat when you were a little kid?
No, I don't.
Did you like vegetables?
I always liked vegetables.
Oh, so do I. How about Brussels sprouts?
I like Brussels
So
sprouts.
do I. I think you and I are the only 2 people on the face of the earth that like Brussels sprouts.
Yes,
But asparagus?
asparagus.
Oh, I love asparagus. I had it for supper last night.
I like asparagus, yes. I like food, period.
I knew I was going to love this lady the minute I walked in this room today. How can you not like food? But you know, when you were young, and certainly when I was young, you didn't buy many things in the store. You grew them.
It was cooked.
You cooked it. You didn't even freeze things. You didn't have a freezer back in those
We
days.
didn't have a freezer, no.
But there were ways to preserve food back in
There
those
were
days.
ways to preserve it, yes.
There's a way to keep your eggs for a long time. There was a way to keep your butter.
Yes.
Far different from the way they do it today, right?
Yes.
And did you make your own butter?
Yes.
Did you have to churn it yourself?
Yes.
Explain to me how that works.
Well, first you separate the cream from the milk, and you let that turn sour. It doesn't take long. And you churn it into butter, separate the butter from the buttermilk, drink the buttermilk.
Of course, drink the buttermilk.
If you like it. They don't everybody like buttermilk, but I used to like buttermilk very much, especially when it was cold.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
You can make lots of things with buttermilk. Buttermilk biscuits,
Well,
for
we-
example.
We used to cook with buttermilk
Of course.
the same as we would sour milk.
Sure.
Yes.
So there were ways to preserve things. You normally had a root cellar, so
Yes.
you could put things down there where it was cool and under the ground,
Yes.
and things would last for a long time.
They would last a long time, yes.
So you cooked right along with your mother, huh? At
With
home?
my mother, yes.
And I'll bet you, Thanksgiving and Christmas, you had some pretty good feasts.
Yes, we did.
Lots of pies.
Lots of pies, yes.
I bet you're a good pie maker.
My mother would cook 6 at a time.
Really?
6 pies at a time, yes.
Hey, when you got, 12 people in your family?
Well, the way they used to serve pie, it was, they'd cut a pie in 6.
Yes.
That was a piece of pie.
That was a good piece of pie. Of course, I can eat 2 pieces at a time.
Yes, of that size. But the size that we ate, you probably wouldn't have ate 2.
Oh, there you go. Now, I want to talk about...
A pie was cut in 6. Don't forget, if you had a big tin, you had a big piece of pie.
There, now, the bigger the tin, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Now, I want to talk about a kind of pie that you'd never, ever see anymore, and that's mincemeat pie.
Well, yes, that's true.
Did your mother make mincemeat pie?
Yes, she did, because she made the minced meat.
Did she use real meat in it, like
Yeah.
venison or beef?
Yes, she did.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And they didn't pour a little rum in it, did they?
Well, they didn't tell me everything they put in it.
I know my father-in-law, the late Alfred Vaughn, made venison mincemeat, and he poured a little rum in there when Leona wasn't looking, 'cause she was a teetotaler.
Yes. Yes, that's
mince-
understandable.
But mincemeat pie.
Mincemeat pie.
Any people who are watching this program saying, what is he talking about? I never heard of mincemeat pie. Dolores, have you ever had mincemeat pie?
I have.
Have you really?
Oh, yes, I've made it.
Oh, don't you love it?
Yes.
Well, I haven't had mincemeat pie in a long time. Hint, hint, hint. For those people who might be watching this program, how about baking bread? Did you bake a lot of bread when you were young?
Yes, we made all our bread. We never bought a loaf of bread when I was young.
Is there anything better than a big, thick slice of homemade bread with
Homemade
real butter?
butter.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
That's all I would need for a sandwich. If you had a little peanut butter and jelly, that would be good, too.
Yes.
I don't remember. Did you have peanut butter when you were a little girl?
I don't think we did.
I don't
Because
think so.
I remember going to the store for my little pail of peanut butter every day.
See that?
We'd go every day. Well, one pail didn't last more than a day because I don't know how much peanut butter there was in that pail. Maybe a cup.
Well, who knows?
And you take a family of 10, that didn't go very far.
When you made things at home for the family and with the family, did you use a printed recipe or did it just come out of your head?
No, it came, well, it's like the first place I went to work to cook after I left home. She told me I was the first cook that she had ever had that could read a cookbook.
Don't you like that? Isn't that funny?
Yes,
Now, what was that for a business or a private family? Or-
That was for a private family. Yes,
Now, were you in high school then, or what?
I was in high school, yes.
And that was somebody nearby where you lived, or?
Oh, yes, it was easy.
Well, of course, West Cheesy is right nearby.
It's right. It was just about the furthest we could get.
Now, did you work as a babysitter or a housekeeper, or what did you do for them?
I worked as a cook.
Oh, there you go.
I hired as a cook.
Wow. And you love to cook, I bet, all your life.
I love to cook all my life. Yes.
Too bad you don't get a chance to do it these days, right?
I wish I could.
Who was the family?
What was the name of the family you worked for? Can you remember?
The O'Briens.
The O'Briens?
The O'Briens.
Oh, my goodness. I wonder if any of their descendants are
The
still alive.
homestead is still there.
Is it really?
Yes.
I love it when the old houses are still there after all
And
these years.
it is being preserved in their honor.
Isn't that terrific?
Yeah.
Like yours. Like, where was it,
The big,
Dolores?
the big camp they had down at Pine Rush.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. And we would go there and stay in the summertime. She would cook in the house. My father was caretaker. And we had the best summer you ever had, right on the beach.
The best of all worlds.
Yes.
What a lucky thing for you as a young person.
I know.
That's terrific. So you worked for the O'Briens for a long time.
Yes, I did.
Is that the only time you worked out during your whole lifetime?
I think so.
Really? Really?
My father died in 1938.
Radio shop. You
Now,
know, there was a radio shop in Plattsburgh at one time where they built radios.
You know, I want to tell people about that because I think about that often. It was called Thermodyne Radio.
Radio shop, yes.
And they made the most beautiful Thermodyne radios, and some of them had very elaborate wooden cabinets.
Yes, they did.
And I have seen many of them over the years, and I was fortunate enough to own one. And many years ago, we had a guy we called the Morning Man on the radio on Wyrie. His name was Chet Bosworth.
Yes, I remember Chet.
Chet Bosworth with Miss Lonely Hearts marching around the table with the birthdays and all that. You remember too, don't you,
I
kiddo?
do. I do.
Well, Chet, he loved to collect those old things and resell them in flea markets. And so I gave him that Thermodyne radio that I had, and he was thrilled.
Yes.
People don't realize how many things were made here in Plattsburgh back in those days.
Back in those days, yes.
There were clocks, the Baird Clock Company, and I was lucky enough to have one of the Baird clocks that was made in the 1800s, the Lozier automobiles,
Yes.
and there were so many things. There was a lot of good things going around here, even before Plattsburgh Air Force Base came here in the early 50s. So, Thermodyne, you worked for them.
Yes.
How long?
Well, that I don't remember.
Well-
I don't think it was too long. I think it was for a fall when they first opened up. And you know how they used to do, they'd open up and then they'd close.
Yes, they did. Thermodyne wasn't here for an awful long time. Well, what was your job? Do you remember what you did there?
No, I don't.
Did you think you worked in the office, or?
No, I didn't work in the office. No, I worked in the shop.
In the shop. Of course, there were other things here like Pal Blade. You remember Pal Blade?
I remember Pal Blade. Pal Blade, it came after Thermodyne went out.
Yeah, that's a long. We're talking some history here, lady.
We're talking old times.
A lot of history. So, you went to high school at Shays East Central Rural School,
Yes.
and did you graduate?
No.
You made it through what grade?
I made it to the second year high.
Really? Second year high school. Then,
High school.
Then you left to go to work?
I became 16.
Isn't that amazing? And you know, a lot of people thought 16, that's old enough. I got to get out and make some money.
Yes,
Got to get out of school, make some money.
that's what I did.
A lot of people just didn't make it to all the way through high school back in those days.
No,
Some people never made it to high school. They were lucky enough to go to 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade and then get out of school and go and work on the farm.
yeah.
Now, was that a farm that you lived on?
It was a farm we lived on, yes.
A big farm or a little farm?
A big farm, 150 acres.
That's a nice sized farm.
Yes.
How many cows?
Oh, I don't remember. We probably started with 9 or 10. But it grew to be 50.
Really?
Yes.
Did you ever milk a cow?
No,
You never milked a cow?
I never milked a cow.
Didn't even try? Didn't say, Dad, I want to do that?
I didn't even try.
Isn't that amazing? You know, I was telling somebody the other day about milking cows by hand every day, morning and night, and they said, how do you do that? And I said, I bet you I could do it even today.
Yeah.
If you sat me down with a cow and showed me which was the right end to go to, I could probably milk a cow.
Yeah, my mother used to milk.
Did
and
she?
That's why I didn't milk.
Oh,
She would let me learn because she said if I learned, I'd have to milk.
there you go. And I'll bet you those 10 kids drank a lot of milk in the course of a day.
I bet they did.
And I'll tell you something else. The milk wasn't pasteurized back in those days either.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't homogenized, and it wasn't pasteurized, and it wasn't 1% or 2% or skim milk. It was
Yeah.
real milk with
Real
cream on it.
From the cow.
Oh,
Yes.
boy. So many great memories. So many great memories. So you had a farm. Did you have to go and work out in the field?
I worked in the field a lot with the horses.
Tell me about it.
Well, I used to like my horses. I'd work them all day and then ride them home at night.
Isn't that? Work the horses all day and ride them home at night.
Yeah.
Do you remember the names of any of your horses?
Yes, Prince and Queen.
I love it. Don't you?
Yeah.
Isn't that great? You know, people who don't love horses are missing something very, very special.
I think so.
I've always loved horses. I've never owned a horse, but I always wanted to and never found a place to board the horse. And I'm probably too old to try to get on now, but I've been around horses a lot in my early days when I worked as a cowboy. But horses are very special, aren't they?
They are.
You get to know them and they get to know you.
They know you.
And you can talk to them and they know what you're talking about.
They know what you're talking about. That's right.
And I bet you never rode a horse with a saddle on it either, did you?
No,
Bareback.
no, it was bareback. Yes.
Ride the horse. Were they big, strong work horses?
They were big, strong work horses, yes.
How many did you have on the farm?
Well, 4 at one time.
Well, you used them for everything.
Well,
You used them for plowing. You used them for raking. You used them for haying and harrowing and
that's right. You used horses for everything
everything.
then, in those days.
Yeah. So you had 4.
Yeah.
Now, whatever became of all your brothers and sisters? No, you had 5 of each, right?
There was, we were 5 of each. Yes. We grew up one at a time,
That's the way it happens.
left the farm, and, well, my youngest brother is on the farm now.
Really?
There's only 3 of us left, you know.
3 out of them? You're going to survive all your friends and relatives.
3 out of the 10, yes.
So you went to work for a long time, and when did you get married?
I got married in 1919.
Did you really? 1919?
I think.
Oh my!
She's 11.
Huh?
I'd have to.
No, it wouldn't be 19. It would be a little bit after that, because you only be 11 years old in 1919. That wouldn't-
Oh, well, I was older than that. I was 18 when
Oh, you were 18. Oh, I gotcha.
But when I got married, yeah.
Well, in those days, they used to call it courting. Young people have no idea what that word even means anymore.
No.
Well, how did you meet the young man? Can you remember how you met him?
Well, I did not know then, but I'm beginning to realize now that my father probably had a hand in it.
Oh, you think so?
I think so, yes.
Now we're getting to the nuts and bolts of this story.
Yeah, because he went to the blacksmith shop, and while he was waiting to have his horses shod, he would talk with different people, different fathers, different boys, and I think that's how that car come to drive in our driveway one time and come up to the house and wanting to take me for a ride.
You think there was a little sneaky stuff going on back in those days?
I think there was. I think there was more help than I realized.
Oh my goodness, isn't that we talk about arranged marriages, and they didn't tell people they were arranged, but there was a little arrangement going on there.
There was a little arrangement going on then. I do believe now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not know it then.
So what was his name?
His name was Norman.
And he courted you for a long time?
For 2 years.
2 years, that's good, that's about right.
Yeah.
And then,
We got married
where'd you get married?
in Wishizi
What church?
at the Catholic Church.
Okay. And then, where did you move to?
We moved to Wishizi.
Did you stay there for the rest of your...
We rented a house there for 5 years until the people that owned it wanted the house for their daughter that was getting married. So we had to vacate the house, find another place to live, and we lived there for a little while. And we lived in Ingraham for a while we were building our house at the lake.
Oh, you built the house at the lake, huh?
Well, my husband had bought his people's home. They were two very old people. They couldn't work the farm, but they did cut the crops off the farm and sell them. That was their income.
Well, I bet they didn't live to be 105.
Well, no, they didn't. They lived old, but they were in their 80s.
Yeah,
And
that was pretty good for back in those days,
back in those days, yes, it was. It's very good.
I just want to pause for a moment to
Okay.
tell our viewers that we're talking with Beulah LaVarnway and her daughter Dolores. Dolores, you thought you were going to have to jump in a lot in this interview, but guess what? Your mom's a pretty sharp lady.
She is.
Don't you think it's wonderful to remember?
Oh, yes.
What do you remember from your childhood?
Oh, a lot of good times.
Well, that's good.
Oh, we lived at the lake. We went swimming in the morning. We went swimming in the afternoon. We went swimming at night. It was really a good life. In the summertime, we went down to the O'Brien's camp on the beach there, and we stayed there in the summertime. But then in 1938, my father died.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. It was,
1938?
my mother was left a widow with 3 little girls.
Oh, my goodness. 1938? Your husband died?
Yeah.
Now, what did he die of?
Well, he was a World War I veteran. Does that tell you anything?
And he had leukemia,
Yes,
in
yeah.
the First World War.
I didn't know anything about it then, like they know
They
now.
didn't know what it was or what to deal with it.
He went in the hospital in 2 weeks and he was gone.
Oh my goodness. And that was 1 year after I was born. How about that? So how many kids did you have? 3?
3.
3. And you were a strong lady, and so you raised those girls on your own. 3 girls?
Right. 3 girls, yes.
And you were you in the middle?
In the
or?
middle.
In the middle again.
Yeah.
Oh, but you were the second one in your family when you were.
I was the second
Yeah.
in the family, yes.
So life was pretty tough going then after the 1930s, wasn't it? We were still in the Depression then.
Yes.
So what do you remember about that? Do you remember the start of the Second World War?
Yes.
I was talking about that when I first came here this morning, about how tomorrow will be Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, and I bet you remember that, right?
Yes, I do.
Because by then you probably had a radio,
Yes.
and you listened to the news.
Yes.
I was just remembering all the news people that were on the air back in those days, and of course Walter Cronkite was, but there was Gabriel Heater
Yes, I remember him.
and Walter Winchell, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea.
I wonder,
Watched him on Sunday.
I remember Walter Winchell.
Yep. That's how we got our news, from the radio. Do you remember the first radio you ever had?
No, I don't.
I was writing a column about it for the newspaper for next Sunday, as we're recording this on the 6th day of December 2013, remembering all the old radios we had and our first television set. And I didn't write down how I built one of those crystal radios. Kids would get a kit, and you'd build a crystal radio with a little cat's whisker, they called it, and you'd string an antenna about 500 feet down through the trees, and then you would turn this thing and slide this thing and try to get a station. If you ever heard one word, it almost brought tears to your eyes. But radios, you remember some of the first radio. Well, you worked for Thermodyne. Did you ever own a Thermodyne radio?
I don't think I
You
did.
don't think they gave you a free radio?
Not that I remember.
Maybe they did.
I could have.
Yeah. But there were a lot of radios, and then the first portable radios came along, and so on. So you remember, in those days, probably when you were a young girl and a teenager, even though you got a newspaper every day, you were more concerned about how you were going to raise your kids and get through that day than you were about what was going on in Germany. Right? It was very important. It was hard work just to get through every day.
It was.
When you consider, I mean, how many times did you ever even come to Plattsburgh when you were very young?
I didn't come very often. No.
No. I mean, we interviewed a wonderful lady from Lake Placid, and when she was 100 years old, and I said, did you ever go to Plattsburgh? She said, I never even heard of it till I grew up. She didn't even know there was a Plattsburgh.
No.
Isn't that amazing?
I believe that.
Well, in those days, your family was your whole social unit. Those were the days before Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And before Twitter, and your church,
Yes.
and your fire station,
Yes.
and your little community, and your family, and that's what about the extent of it.
That was life. It was life for you.
Do you ever remember any of the church suppers when you were young?
Not special ones.
Boy, I do. Box lunches and church suppers,
Yes. That's how we raised our money.
of course.
That was one of the last things my father did, was work on a church supper
Come on.
before in November, the turkey raffle at West Shazy. And then he went into the hospital right after that, and he died.
How old were you when your dad died?
9.
9?
Yep.
It must have been horrible for a young kid.
Yeah.
You know, I was just, before my mother died, we got to chat a lot more than we did when she was a young person and we were young. We talked a lot. But her father died 2 months before she was born. So her mother raised 7 kids. In those days, I just want to let people know that life wasn't easy. You didn't go to the supermarket to get all your groceries. You didn't even go to Merkel's in those days.
I worked for Merkel's for 10 years after
I'm so glad I brought that up.
after I graduated from high school. I went to a year of business school, and then I went to work
Where'd
in
you
the
go?
office
Our Lady
there.
of Victory?
It was Loretta then.
Loretta,
Yes. And I went to work in the business office there
No.
for Mr. Merkel. I was there for 10
Upstairs?
10 years, yep. On
So
the
you
third
saw
floor.
the pneumatic tubes coming
Yes.
up all the time?
Yes.
People have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, those pneumatic tubes are still used in businesses. In some businesses, they look a lot more modern. Matter of fact, they use a similar system at CVPH Hospital right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But you would go down and you'd make your purchase,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd put your bill and your money in a small canister. Sometimes they were brass.
Mm-hmm.
They'd close the little door,
Yeah.
put it in the machine, and you'd
Could go.
Is that what you did? Did you?
I did that as a sub, and during the noon hours, I was a bookkeeper. I had charge of the credit bills then, and then at the noon hour, I would sub on the desk.
Well, I just got an email the other day from a wonderful woman who's opened up a little business in the old Merkel store.
Really?
And that was almost like the air base closing when they said they were going to close Merkel's
I
after
know.
all those years.
I know.
Downtown Plattsburgh was a little different then than it is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was on a Saturday night back in the old days.
Everybody went down.
Everybody went downtown just to walk around and see what was happening. Now it's all malls, and not that that's a bad thing, but downtown was king back in those days. So, okay, so you raised your kids, you worked like crazy to make ends meet while your kids were small.
She went to work at the paper mill.
Who did?
My mother did.
You went to work at the paper mill?
Yes.
Tell me about it. What was that like?
Well, it was a lot different than what I had been doing. I had some adjustments to make.
That's simple. That's easy to say. You had some adjustments to make.
I had to learn to like my work.
My mother could drive her car.
You had a car?
Yeah, well, I had to have a car to go to work. I lived in Chazy.
Isn't that amazing? What kind of car did you have? You remember?
It must have been an Oldsmobile.
It was a 1936 Plymouth.
1936 Plymouth?
Yes, I remember that.
We had.
Now that she mentions it,
Isn't that amazing? And you
You
learned to
know-
drive it too?
that was
No, I didn't.
that was a two-door. That was the car that kept the children safe in the back seat.
Because it was a two-door and they couldn't get out, and you learned how to shift.
You have the company trunk?
Oh, did you have the back that opened up like a rumble seat in that one? No.
No, not in that one.
Oh, the humpy trump in the back of the old Plymouth.
No,
Where-
it was a two-door with a back seat.
well, how did you get a car anyway? Did you have to buy it from a dealer?
Yes.
My father was in the World War, and you remember they had to march on Washington because they didn't give them their.
Oh, very well.
All right.
I don't remember, but
they
I've
got-
seen the pictures.
They got, I think it was $600 or $800. My father did, and they bought that new car for $600.
I want you to know that was big money
I know.
back then during
I
the
know.
Depression. Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, no, I know you're not. $600 or $800.
Yeah.
1936.
Yeah.
Wow. So you had to take a driver's test,
Yeah,
and you passed it with flying colors.
with flying colors. They had told me I'd never pass it.
Oh, really? Little did they know.
I was too nervous at the wheel.
Yeah, they thought you wouldn't live to be 100, and I guess you fooled them.
I
You
fooled-
can't even see 100 in your rear view mirror these days. And when you drove from all the way up there, all the way down to the mill every day,
Yes,
and gas was 25 cents a gallon,
yeah,
5 gallons for $1,
yeah.
Little different from these days.
Yes.
My goodness. You better be glad you don't have to drive a car these days. In those days, and then...
I'm glad in more ways than one because I'm blind today.
Well, you know what? When did your sight start to go?
40 years ago.
Really?
It went gradually, yeah.
It is gradual. Was it one eye at a time?
No,
They both went?
they both went.
Was it macular degeneration?
Macular degeneration.
Oh, gosh. So you can't see anything now?
No.
Thank goodness you can't see me. You can just imagine me as a 20-year-old handsome dude sitting next to you instead of a 76-year-old old fat guy with white hair. But anyway, what else do you remember about back in the day, from the 1920s? Do you remember when the Depression started?
No, I never felt the depression.
You know, that's very true of so many people who had to work so hard on the farm. It didn't make any difference. They didn't have much to start with.
That's right. You didn't have much to lose, not much to start with, not much to do with, and you had to get along with what you had. So what difference did it make?
Yeah, that's very, very true, and it's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up. Do you remember FDR?
Yes.
What do you remember about Franklin Delano Roosevelt?
He gave us our Social Security.
So many interesting things now in retrospect. As a kid, you don't realize what's going on. I had no idea as a youngster that he had polio. They had ways of hiding things in those days. They didn't show him in a wheelchair. They didn't even show him walking with crutches. They showed him propped up behind something, right?
Yeah.
It was after he died that I realized that
Oh, sure.
he was...
And I can remember when I was a fairly young boy, them telling me that FDR was dead, and it was a terrible, terrible shock for the country, because he was such a forceful character, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
So many things. He had this vision, a different kind of vision. It has nothing to do with politics. He was just a very interesting character. And now that some of the old movies, home movies, are coming out, we see what life was really like. They pulled the wool over our eyes in many ways back in those days. Nowadays, presidents can't get away with anything. Everybody. Do you follow politics at all these days, or don't you care?
Well, yes, I do care. I always care. Yes,
Did you vote every year when you were a youngster?
every year.
I love to hear that.
I never missed.
I turned 18 a long time ago, and I have to say that I've never, ever missed a national election
No,
since the first day I voted.
I never have. I think I missed last fall.
But you know what? People can learn a lesson from folks like you, Beulah LaVarnway,
Yes.
to care about things in your country and in the world. And it's too bad you can't get to read papers. You can't read a newspaper now, can you?
No, I haven't read a newspaper in ages.
Well, they have people who go and read the newspapers.
She had reading books at one time.
I
Yeah.
offered to
she
buy
liked
the newspaper if they would read it to me, but no one would offer.
I would come down and read to you sometime, because I love to read to people, because I love to write children's books and so on. Did you read a lot when you were a young person, or were you too busy working to do any real reading?
I was too busy to do any real reading when I was young.
Yeah, but you could have written 200 books
Yeah.
with your life experiences.
I think I have written 200 books in my mind.
You know what? I love that. Did you hear what she said? I think I've written 200 books in my mind. I think we've all done that. Sometimes we have to keep those things in our mind secret, and sometimes if we're gifted enough and we have the opportunity, then we can write it down and share that with other people, and that's why I'm so delighted to be able to write a newspaper column regularly in the Press Republican here in Plattsburgh to let people know about some of my experiences. But if I could get inside your mind, I could start writing those 200 books.
Yes, you could.
You know, I think you've just about written a book right here on television today. We're going to pause for a moment, and then we're going to chat some more. Stay with us. It's amazing. We shut off the camera for a moment, and we heard so many different things that you've done in your lifetime that we didn't know, that we have to keep it going. I hope we don't tire you out.
No.
She's probably got more energy than all of us put together after almost 105 years. Now, your daughter told me that when your first husband died, you got married again.
Yes, but not for a long time. It was over 20 years.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And what was your second husband's name?
It was LaVarnway. Thomas.
Okay.
Thomas LaVarnway.
And he lived until 1980?
1980.
Oh, my goodness.
He's been gone for over 30 years now.
Donovan.
First husband.
The first husband was Donovan.
Her father.
Yeah, your dad was Donovan, and then LaVarnway.
Then LaVarnway.
It's hard for me to keep up with all of this. And then your daughter told me you went to work at Champlain College here on the former base?
Yes,
What did you do there?
cooked.
I should have known. It's a miracle they didn't hire you at the big restaurants and hotels in New York City.
Well, I wasn't a big-time person. I wasn't a big-time person. No.
I think you're a big-time person right now. How do you like that? I think you're very, very special. How long did you work at the college here? Quite a while?
Maybe a year or two.
And I'm sure many of our viewers, Dolores, don't even know that there was a Champlain College here.
I know.
I had forgotten until you mentioned it, because I remembered they had an outlet in Malone back in those days.
I remember. That's when the son-in-laws came because they had given an extra year of schooling after they had interrupted their school.
Oh, yeah.
In order to catch up, and well, that's how the schoolings came about.
Oh, my goodness. What year did you go to work there? Does anybody remember what year that might have been?
In addition,
Sister was around 18.
So what year would that be, Dolores, do you think? What would you guess?
47, around 50.
Around 1950?
Maybe before that, 48, 49. Because I graduated in 47. I went to a year of business school, and then I went to work in 48 at
Yeah.
Miracles. And I think that's when they were working at the college.
Oh, my goodness, you've done so many things. Was that the last place you worked, Champlain College, or did you have a job somewhere after
At a
that?
restaurant after
Oh,
that.
restaurant. Tell me about your restaurant. I didn't know you had a restaurant. Where was that?
on Clinton Street,
What was it called?
the Redwood.
I've heard that name.
Really?
My goodness. What year was that? What? You got to give me a time frame here. When do you think that was?
I was so busy I didn't take the time.
When you own a restaurant, you got to work a lot of hours.
Yeah. I'd say 47, 48, somewhere in there, because I was in high school.
In the 40s, in the late 40s. Did you buy the restaurant, or did you?
I bought it.
Was it a restaurant before you got in there?
I don't think it was.
So you had to set it all up?
I
tea
think
room.
I think it had been a tea room.
See? Some of the old timers are saying, Gordy, don't you remember? No, I didn't come here till the early 50s to work on the airbase, and didn't start in the radio business here until 1961. So I missed all this good part of your life. So that's hard work to run a restaurant, isn't it?
It is. It's long hours. Of course, I knew what restaurant work was. It was not new to me.
Really?
I knew that food is hard work.
So did you do all the cooking yourself?
Yes, I did.
Just to let people know who have a staff of 8 or 10 in a little restaurant, did you have waitresses that worked for you?
Yes, I did.
Like more than one?
More than one, yes.
And did you work 7 days a week?
We worked 7 days a week.
Ramona Venn, Bob's sister, was one of them.
Who was this?
Ramona Venn.
Oh, Ramona Venn, the late Bob Venn's sister? Come on.
Yes.
We're getting connections all over the place. Our viewers might not know that the late Bob Venn did a great program with Calvin for years called What's Going On Here? And when I left the radio business in 1997, Bob Venn had the bad sense to die. And the next thing I knew, Calvin was sitting in my river room saying, how would you like to go on television?
Mona graduated in 46.
Mona graduated in 1947? Oh,
Yes.
with you. Oh, my goodness.
Bob went to school in Champlain.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about the Venns. We got side conversations going all over the place here. How long did you have the restaurant?
You know, I can't.
It was a couple years, then she went to work for Montgomery Ward.
You went to work at Montgomery Ward?
Yes.
Come on.
From
Ma-
my restaurant, I went to work to Montgomery Ward.
What did you do?
Well, I had charge of the department, the household department.
Household goods and...
You might know. Yes.
might know that you'd be in charge of the household goods department in Montgomery Ward. You even outlived them. They don't even exist anymore.
No, they don't.
Isn't that... They moved to several locations.
Yeah.
If we had a lot of time, Beulah, I would tell stories about doing live remote radio broadcasts in the windows at Montgomery Ward, where you couldn't just edit things because it was live, and people bringing in television sets that didn't work and saying, I want to know where the blankety blank manager is, and I'm trying to put the microphone in my pants or my back pocket or somewhere. So how long did you work for Ward's?
For about 15 years and all.
No kidding.
Yeah.
My goodness, this woman has done everything. And when did you decide to start traveling?
When I got married, I guess.
So you took a lot of trips.
We took a lot of trips, yeah.
Your daughter told me you went to probably all 50 states?
I did go. I did cover the 50 states.
Just, did you go by plane?
No, we went mostly by car.
How long did you couldn't, of course, you couldn't take a car to Hawaii. You had to get on a plane, unless you got on a boat to go to Hawaii. That was after Tom died. You went to Hawaii?
That was after Tom died.
You didn't drive all the way to Alaska, did you?
No, I never took the wheel once.
You never took the wheel once?
No.
You just sat there saying, no, I meant to take that left turn right over there.
No, I was not allowed.
Oh, you weren't allowed? Even though you were a very good driver?
Yeah, that's right.
I can't believe it. You just love to travel.
Well, I love to follow, I guess.
Oh, is that it? So you visited, what was your favorite state? Can you remember?
No, because I saw them at different times, and we saw different things, and it was a different season, and everything was different about everything.
Everything was so different back then with old cars. Did you ever break down along the road?
No,
Come on.
no,
Isn't that amazing?
no, it was amazing, and it was glorious, too.
It was wonderful. Those were the days before a lot of cars had good air conditioners in them.
They used to square dance a lot, too.
Square dancing. Now we know how you got to be 105. Square dancing.
We did a lot of square dancing, yeah.
Where did you square dance most when you were a young person? In people's houses, in the Grange Hall, where?
In the Grange halls, and where we went for meetings and always had a dance.
You know, this is a complete aside again, but it's connected. I was asked to go to the Grange Hall in Malone a couple of weeks ago to tell ghost stories to a wonderful group of people. And I walked into the old Grange Hall in Malone and I said, whoa, deja vu all over again. I learned to square dance right here in this Grange Hall when I was 14 years old.
You did?
And I walked in the door and I hadn't been there in all those years, and what a great experience. There are Grange Halls all over this nation, right?
Yes.
Where people learn to square dance.
There are, yes.
My mother and father belonged to the Grange, too.
Well,
They were in it when they were first married, when they were younger.
Well, you know, we've talked a lot about the Grange and about Woodmen of the World. Calvin's been directly and indirectly associated with Woodmen of the World, a similar type organization for a long, long time. But the Grange and the GLF and all those places were very popular around here back in the day, right?
Yes, they were,
So you did a lot of square dancing every week.
yes.
What, do you remember some of the dances?
No,
Did you ever try to call a square dance?
no.
No, those people were wonderful back in the day. They could just play a record, and I walked in that Grange Hall a couple of weeks ago, and I saw a beautiful big wooden cabinet there. Nobody knew what it was, and I told them it was a 1934 Wurlitzer jukebox, and you put a nickel in. And you pressed a button and you got your song from the old 78 RPM records, remember them?
Yeah,
Yes, and you could play your record for a nickel. I'm still going to call down there and find out who owns that jukebox. I think it would look really, really good in my river room. But anyway, square dancing, there was a lot of exercise when you were young.
it was a lot of exercise, yes.
It was exercise, just getting up and going out and doing things and washing dishes and doing everything by hand and raising a family and traveling around the world and working and working and working. When did you finally start to relax a little bit? Huh? In the last few years, right?
Well,
You don't have to do any cooking anymore.
no, I eat out now.
Did you ever make clothes and dresses for the girls out of
Many, many, many of them.
Did you?
I
Out of the
used,
green bags
I
and the
used,
flower bags?
I used to love to sew for my family.
Isn't that
We
wonderful?
were all always very well dressed.
Isn't that beautiful? And how many young housewives even have a sewing machine? Right? Oh, you have one? Maria's got one. She made me out to be a liar. But you learned how to darn. I mean, I grew up in the age of hand-me-downs, where something had a little hole in it. You sewed it. You darned socks, didn't you?
Yes, you fixed it and you made go.
Yeah, there were a lot of phrases connected with make do or do without. That was one of my mother's. Make do or do without. That had to do with the food on the table and the clothes on our back, and she made me wear my brother's hand-me-down knickers.
We all did that.
Remember knickers when the boys wore knickers
Yes, I do.
with the elastic bands around the legs? And I had a jackknife, and I cut the elastic band so they wouldn't hurt my legs.
Some of them did, yes.
I did, because I had high-top shoes with a little pouch on the side, and that's where I kept my jackknife.
Your jackknife, yeah.
All boys and men carried a jackknife, right?
Yes.
Nowadays, if you carry a jackknife to school in the 3rd grade, you know what happens?
No.
you find another school. That's what happens, because you're out to lunch.
You're out.
So, did you make packages for people during the Depression?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Well, that wasn't steady work. That was just a pastime. I don't know. We did it once or twice, I guess. But that's all.
To help people out.
To help people out, yes.
There were a lot of people in trouble. But what I found out from you today, if you kept your chin up, you got up early in the morning and worked like crazy all day long, you could make it.
You could make it, is right.
And you did.
And I did.
I can't believe this. And you traveled to every big state, not only this state, but other countries. What other countries did you visit?
Well,
How about Ireland?
I didn't visit. I don't think I went to Ireland. Maybe,
I think you did go to Ireland. I heard you did.
maybe I did.
I bet you did. I loved Ireland as much as any place I've ever been, and Scotland too.
Yeah, I always wanted to go to Ireland, but
Do it.
I'm too old now.
Do it. Give me a break. You're never too old. I'll tell you what tours to get on and how to do it. You can talk to my daughter-in-law, Judy Baker, who's been there 5 times. I went with her once. Talk about a whirling dervish. You know, Judy, I need to sit down a minute. No, we're going to miss. We're going to the Guinness Brewery in Dublin. I said, oh, okay. Guinness is good. So anyway,
To Israel,
so you went to Israel once too?
Yes,
to Greece.
And Greece?
Greece,
And Italy.
Italy.
See, I'm just reflecting there's a little voice in my ear here telling me everything. So what, now that you're looking back on your life, was it a good life? Has it been a good life?
It's been a good life.
As long as you have people who love you and people you love, as long as you look back on it and say, yeah, I think we did okay.
What more do I want?
What more could you ever want?
Yes.
You know, that's a good philosophy. If somebody were to sit down, if Willard Scott calls you on your birthday, you're going to go crazy, aren't you? If Willard Scott says, Beulah, how did you make it to 105? What are you going to tell him?
Well, I can't tell them a thing unless they tear the old thing to pieces and do it that way, a little at a time.
Yeah, you can't get it all done this minute, right? You can't get it all done now.
No,
I bet you never smoked cigarettes.
no,
See?
but I tried to.
Oh, you did try that? We all did.
Yeah.
We all did back in the day. But
Yeah.
that didn't suit you very well.
Well, we weren't afraid to get caught.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And how did you ever go to bars? Did you ever have a little sip of?
Yes, I went with my husband.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh, well, you do. We got to find out what the secret is here.
He took me to those places.
He did, right?
When I didn't want to go alone, but I did want to see them. And he gladly took me.
You said you were a good follower.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of good music in bars back in those days. A lot of good country. Do you like music?
Yes.
What kind?
I guess you call it dance music.
Good dance music?
Yeah.
Oh, I bet you could do the Charleston.
No, I never did the Charleston.
Never did the Charleston? I could never do it either without cracking my knees. But dancing was fun. Square dancing was great. You like the waltz?
I liked the square dance,
The foxtrot?
the foxtrot,
And the waltz?
the waltz.
Never any really fancy ballroom dancing, no?
No.
You know, my wife and I watched that new version of The Sound of Music on television last night. I didn't know how long it was, and it ended way after my bedtime, but I propped my eyelids open and watched it, and they were doing old-fashioned dancing, and I remembered back in the 3rd grade when my teacher, Mrs. McGee, taught us how to do the Virginia Reel.
Oh.
My goodness. And they taught us music in school and when we were little kids in those days.
Well, there was music in schools to a certain extent, yes.
I never forget my old teachers because they had a huge impact on my life. So I admire anybody who goes into that business. But you know what else? I admire you. You've had a long and wonderful life. And how long do you expect the good Lord will let you stay on this earth?
Maybe 10 years.
I can't wait to come back and interview you when you're 117. Beulah, thank you so much for allowing us to learn a little bit more about you and to embarrass every one of our viewers who say, oh, I'm so tired, I'm going to be 24 pretty soon. Listen to this lady who's going to be 105 right after Christmas. And I'm so glad to meet you.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad to meet your wonderful daughter, Dolores. Thank you for being here today.
You're very welcome.
It's just been a terrific experience to tell your story.
Somebody had to bring me.
Somebody? Well, you've got a wonderful story, and maybe one of these days somebody will stop by and say, Beulah, can I write 2 or 3 of those 200 books that are in your brain?
Yeah. I might.
We'll do exposés about what life was like in the teens and 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and on into... Did you ever think you'd live into a new century after the year 2000?
No.
Is it? I mean, even Calvin and I have talked about that, and we're young compared to you.
Yes. Yeah.
We never thought we'd make it past Y2K.
Yeah,
I never thought I'd live this long.
Well, here you are. And may the good Lord give you the good health and the happiness and the love from your family and friends for much, much longer, Beulah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Dolores, you're the best.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here with your mommy today and all your contributions to everything. World traveler. And now rock on tour, whatever that means, telling all these great stories of growing up in the North Country. It's time to wrap it up, and I hate to go. I'm having so much fun here today. Our thanks to Maria and the rest of the staff here for inviting us over to Pine Harbor. We've enjoyed every single minute of it. Calvin and I have been doing this for a long, long time, and hopefully the good Lord will allow us to do this for a long time in the future. I always end by thanking our viewers for your comments and your suggestions. Some people will tell us about folks they know that should be interviewed. We were so delighted to get that first email from Maria saying, guess what's happening at Pine Harbor? So we're thrilled to be here today and pleased to do it as well. I also want to end by telling those people who are watching our program on Hometown Cable that this program is broadcast on the internet at hometowncablenetwork.com and at Plattsburgh.com. And if I know Calvin, he'll have it posted on Facebook before he goes to bed tonight. It's just the kind of guy he is. But it's also aired on the local cable systems around the North Country. And he's been doing this for a long, long time, and I have, come to think of it, for almost 17 years. So, if you have a checkbook near you and you want to support this program, because we do this because we love to, and this is what Calvin does for a living, get that checkbook out and send him a generous check and send it to Hometown Cable in care of our little corner, Calvin Castine, 1477 Ridge Road in Champlain. And we thank you all for watching. And we hope if you see this before Christmas that you have a great holiday season and well into a brand new year, 2014 coming up, Beulah.
2014.
Hang in there. And who knows where we're going to be next